me, Shramana Acharjee, your host for the evening, and Ranabir, our FIFA expert. It's officially that time of the year where you can hear screams of victory miles apart and your friends flock around the TV screens to watch their favorite football teams compete for football supremacy. Today there's a very interesting match between Morocco and Iran at St. Petersburg Stadium at 8:30 p.m. In this third match of this year's World Cup, how are the two teams going to approach the match?
Before going into this match, I would love to say to all our viewers, all our subscribers and fans that we have just come to know that Uruguay have defeated Egypt by a solo goal, and that was scored by Jimenez with a set piece. And for most of the fans, Mohamed Salah didn't play. He was in the bench itself, but he didn't get the opportunity. Probably we'll see him in the next few matches playing for his team. Now we'll be coming to the Group B. The Group B, interesting teams altogether. Iran, Morocco, then we have Spain, Portugal. Now if you look at the group combination, you will definitely say, obviously, we're going to expect something like Spain and Portugal going to top two. But I'll say, no, don't assume that. Because at this juncture of time, if you look at the performances of all the four teams, taking into consideration what happened with the Spain coach, and now Fernando here is the coach of Spanish team, and if you see the performances how Iran played in the qualifying matches, and how Morocco, the team which will be playing in the World Cup today after 20 years, definitely you must be changing your speculations. And if you are playing fantasy leagues, or rather, make sure give some points to these teams, Iran and Morocco. Iran, traditional Asian powerhouse, and on the other hand we have Morocco, the team. There is a difference between the teams like Nigeria and others and this team what we are considering the Morocco, because out of the 23 players in the squad itself, 17 of them are not from Morocco. That's a big thing. And before the start of the World Cup, we have been saying that this time around, we're not having Netherlands, we're not having Italy. But you'll be surprised to know that there are 5 players who are from Netherlands and they will be playing for Morocco. That's a big thing. That's why you're bound to get some European flavor from an African team. And that's why I believe that Morocco is going to be my bet for this match. But I won't be supporting for Iran also, because Iran is one team which hasn't lost a single match in the qualifiers. And I think the Indians will definitely remember Iran, because this Iran team basically played against India in the qualifiers. So this is going to be a cracker of a match, and we have none other than Mr. Carlos Queiroz, the coach of the Iran team. Queiroz is a popular name in the football circuit, and I guess this person is certainly going to deliver some interesting strategies how to put up the Moroccan team. And when you look at Morocco, who have been playing well of late, and if you look at the football history what Morocco has come up, in the year 1986, when they first qualified for the World Cup, they defeated the 3 teams in the first round and they qualified for the second round. That was absolutely amazing, and they were the first African team to do that. As far as Iran is concerned, yes, they have been playing pretty well, but sadly they haven't made to the second round as of now. And I guess all of us are aware that they have only won one match as of now. That was way back against the USA, where they won by a solo goal. So this match is pretty well poised, and we know both the teams are well aware that if they want to have any chance of going into the next round, they have to win this match, and that too with a bigger margin. Yesterday we have seen how Russia played their game against Saudi Arabia. They were pretty keen with a goal difference. That's why, in spite of the fact that they scored 3 goals before 70 minutes, they ensured that they have good goal difference. That's why they went with 5 goals. So I think this is going to be a cracker of a match. And although you may say that this match is certainly going to be, these two teams are going to be eliminated, but I say, no guys, wait, you have to see, because we'll be having that match between Spain and Portugal also. So if one of those teams which wins today, the match between Iran and Morocco, and if that typical team can fancy the chances against one of the two teams, who knows, this group can certainly be the group of death. And you know, if Spain and Portugal go out from this group itself, it will be a huge upset, because on one hand you will be having someone like Iniesta, someone like Gerard Piqué, someone like Diego Costa, and on the other side you have someone like CR7, Cristiano Ronaldo, Moutinho, and all other players. So this match, Morocco and Iran, is definitely pretty important for the Group B.
Okay, Iran has been Asian powerhouse, playing well consistently. What will be their playing style for this match?
Well, if you're looking if we're introspecting how these teams have been playing all together, I'm sorry to say, both the teams lack in their firepower as far as their forward is concerned. And if you look at the defenses, both the teams have pretty good defense structure. As far as Iran is concerned, they didn't get so many goals, and they were the team who conceded least goals in the qualifying matches. And as far as Morocco is concerned, don't forget that they defeated teams like Ivory Coast, Gabon, Mali, all these teams. So both the teams have got pretty good solid defense. So I guess when the teams will be playing today, more or less they will be enforcing their defense well. They'll be looking for the first 40 minutes. I think the game is all about finding the midfield altogether. It will be fight of them two midfields, and after that, probably after the first half, you can see the teams coming up, having this withdrawal forwards or wingers. The coach is asking the wingers to overlap. So I think you can see some interesting moves in the second half. Especially what happens, when you're playing your first World Cup, as it happens with both the two teams, so many young players all together, you tend to soak up the pressure which you have. After all, you're representing your country, and this is a huge platform. And the biggest difference between the match against Saudi Arabia and Russia and today's Morocco and Iran is that in this match we'll be seeing some fantastic players. On one hand, we'll be seeing Mehdi Benatia. Now this player Benatia actually plays for Juventus, one of the top teams of Italy. So you will be seeing some individual glittering performances. On the other hand, there are wonder kids also. I guess from Real Madrid, we'll be seeing Achraf Hakimi, who will be playing for Morocco. So I'll be saying this player is also going to be interesting, but let's see whether the coach actually opts for him to play in the first half, or he may bring him as a substitute in the later half of the match. So altogether, both the teams will be pretty careful as far as first 30-40 minutes are concerned. Then I think they'll be opting for a more offensive approach, and then you can see goals. But obviously, advantage Morocco. You may say that Morocco doesn't have that high ranking. Morocco is 41 and Iran has got 37. But don't forget, Morocco plays with African teams. That is something we need to remember when we are comparing the FIFA rankings of both these teams. Anyhow, I guess we need to go for a break now. So we'll be back pretty soon. And don't forget that we'll be coming up with more views, more inside updates, and that would be excellent for you, because when you're seeing the match itself, you'll be keenly interested to know who will be the important players playing for both the teams.
जिक्र जब भी जीएसटी की होती है तो नजरें ढूंढती हैं जीएसटी दोस्त विकास धनानिया को।
नमस्कार विकास जी, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आने के लिए।
विकास धनानिया बात करते हैं पूरी जिम्मेदारी के साथ
कि यहाँ पर गुड्स को रिसीव्ड नहीं किया गया है। हाँ, लेकिन तब आपको ये प्रूफ करना पड़ेगा कि भाई हमने तो हैंड रिक्शा से मंगा लिया है।
आम आदमी जीएसटी को जानना चाहता है, लिहाजा सवालों का अंबार है। इन्हीं सवालों को समेटते हैं हमारे होस्ट राकेश। हर ट्यूसडे और फ्राइडे रात 8 बजे होस्ट राकेश और दोस्त विकास धनानिया हो जाते हैं आमने सामने, सिर्फ आपके लिए जियो बांग्ला पर। देखिए जीएसटी की बात दोस्त के साथ जियो बांग्ला पर।
Welcome back to Googly Goals. Ranabir, traditionally African teams rely on power more than skill. Will Morocco team come up with a similar display today?
Well, that has been the topic of discussion, because I guess you remember when we have seen the Under-19 World Cup also, when we were seeing the matches being played in India itself, we were seeing the African teams which played, they were basically relying on more on power and they were lacking in skill. But this Morocco team, I say, is very different from other African teams which have qualified for this year's World Cup. And that's why I think, and as you have so many players from Europe itself, because what happens, the domestic league actually plays a pretty important role. When you have players who are playing in the domestic league, especially in the African circuit, it's more about your power, it's more about your stamina. That's why you see that typically how Algerian players play, how Tunisian players play, how Nigerian players play, how Ghana players play. But this Morocco team, I think, is very different. And under this coach, Hervé Renard, they have changed their playing style and they're playing with a pretty attacking mindset. And that was even reflected when they were playing the qualifier games altogether. And when you have defeating teams like Ivory Coast, teams like Gabon, teams like Mali, they must be having something pretty special, and we have seen they are being considered one of the dark horses for this year's World Cup. Another thing, I guess we need to remember that nowadays Iran, which was previously they used to mainly take players who used to take in the domestic leagues, they are also looking at players who are playing outside. So that is also one of the big changes. And as far as technology is concerned, with new medical sciences, new opportunities, gone are those days where in the 80s we used to see the Asian players coming up, they are lagging, they are in fitness after 60th minute or 65 minutes, they are lacking fitness or something. Nowadays you won't finding that. In spite of the fact Saudi Arabia conceded 5 goals in yesterday's match against Russia, one thing I really loved about that, they kept running. They didn't lose their mindset, their strategy. Although Russia was played pretty superbly, they were superb in most sectors of the game, but kudos to these players. So if you tell me that considering all these teams which have qualified from Asia for this year's World Cup, I'll definitely say that if you consider the marginal differences, Iran is the best team among others. And when you are comparing Iran, we have got South Korea, we have Japan, we have Saudi Arabia, all these teams. And we have seen in the qualifying matches also, Iran defeated a team like South Korea, which has progressed so much as far as football is concerned. So this time it won't be pretty easy for Iran, won't be pretty easy for Morocco either. But as far as cricket, as football brain is concerned, I'll say it's something like that. Morocco may win this match by 2-1 or something, 1-0. But obviously, when you have a coach of the caliber of Carlos Queiroz in Iran, you can definitely expect some upset, something or the other happening. And as far as team combination is concerned, Aliza Jahanbakhsh is going to be a pretty good player in this today's match, because there is a different style in which Iran plays. They don't actually rely on the playmakers or something. They basically attack on a typical way. And as far as formation is concerned, I guess they may opt for 4-3-3 combination or something like 4-2-3-1. When you're playing 4-2-3-1, the role of the player, the single forward, is pretty important. In that case, you can expect you can have long balls. And these two pivotal players who are going to play behind those 3 midfielders, they need to maintain the shape. Because if they're not being able to maintain the shape, then it would be pretty difficult for Iran to stop the Moroccan players, because they will be taking an offensive approach, because you know they play after 20 years. And also, as far as the combination of other Morocco is concerned, you can expect to them play like 4-2-3-1 or something like 4-1-4-1. Now this 4-1-4-1 combination is a bit difficult. You need to maintain the shape altogether, and the role of the persons who are overlapping, it becomes pretty important. But both the teams are pretty aware of the fact that they don't have too many players who can score goals. As far as Morocco is concerned, I think they will be most relying on Benicia. They will definitely having dependence on Ayoub El Kabi, who is the number 9 player. So Kabi is going to play an important role today. But I do think Morocco has upper hand on Iran for today's match.
Okay, what can be the predicted scoreline for today's match at St. Petersburg?
I guess it will be something like 2-1 or 1-0 for Morocco. But Iran would be pretty happy if they can get a draw out of today's match. They'd be absolutely happy. At least they'll have a chance for the getting into the qualifying round by the knockout stage. Because they might think that, well, playing against Portugal or Spain, they can have a chance altogether. So Iran will definitely go for 0-0, 1-1, something like that. But Morocco will go for the offensive, and any margin would be pretty good for them.
Thank you for joining us, Ranabir. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Googly Goals. Stay in tune for more FIFA previews. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Take care. Bye-bye.